Hey guys, thanks for joining me. And if you like what you see, please subscribe.
Hello, peoples. Welcome to Sharp Ends. If you are new to the knife world, it can seem overwhelming and you might not know where to start with a collection. I would suggest going cheap. And so all the knives I have on the table here are relatively inexpensive, all under $100 or represent something that's under $100. This is actually more than 100, but I'll get to why I included it in a minute. Um, there are a lot of different choices. My general advice to you, if you don't watch any more of the video, is try a little bit of everything. Um, by that, I mean there are a lot of different opening mechanisms. There's also a lot of different kinds of locks. You should try them all and see what your preference is. You can also get really confused about steels because if it just says, German stainless or, stainless steel, and in general, that knife steel is going to be bad. You actually do need to learn a little bit, at least the bare minimum of letters you should be looking for each price category. If, like me, you got into this because you happen to always carry a pocket knife, but you never really paid attention and you always had like a cheap pocket knife. Um, what happened to me was that I got an Andela and it was like $120 knife. And I didn't know you could spend that much money on a knife, let alone want to. And the Andela really changed things for me. It has a lock back here, and that lock back or back lock is very strong, and it stayed sharp forever. And it was like a real step up from the Tenacious, which I had before. And it kind of opened the world to why are there so many knives and why do people have them? The Tenacious, I think, is running a little expensive these days. I can't remember, but I feel like it's super expensive and it's not necessarily an entry-level knife anymore. I don't think Spyderco is an entry-level brand anymore either. But it might be the brand that you step up to after you're done as an intermediate step onto better and bigger things. I'm going to tell you some of my favorite knives right now that I think are worth for under $80. Number one is the Ontario Rat number one, or Rat number two, I should say. This is a smaller knife. By smaller, I mean it's just your standard knife size. It's got a 3-inch blade, well, 2 3/4 inch blade, and overall, we're looking at about 7 inches. Very good ergos, which means, it's nice to hold. It has a thumb stud, and then it has a liner lock. So the number one liner that you're gonna, or number one lock you're gonna see in this price range, in general, is gonna be the liner lock. This you just simply push over to the side and you close, right? And the Rat has a nice flipping action. By the way, learning how to flip open a knife can be very dangerous. And when I did it, I actually cut myself. Also, don't be thrown off by these scales. They come in plain green and black, I believe. This is a special thing that I added on afterwards. And there will be links down below to all of this. So with the thumb stud, what I like to do is I actually like to use my thumbnail itself and I put it here. And what I'm doing is I'm kicking out in this direction. And the geometry between the thumb stud and the pivot is what gives it the flicky action. So I'm just going flick like that. Very easy, light motion, not much pressure. Yeah, you can cut yourself pretty badly like I did. If you're trying to use the flesh of your thumb here to push it out, you can misdial and then it can come out and then you can push your thumb on to the blade, which is bad. The easier way to do it is just to roll it out. That is nice and safe. You can also finger flick it, but that's for later. So yeah, the Rat number one or the Rat number two, both of them, they have two different kinds of variants. They come in D2 tool steel, which is a kind of antiquated knife steel, but it's still pretty good, especially if you can get it for under 40 bucks. 30 bucks, it's okay. It usually comes in something called AUS 10, I believe, is what the base model Rat comes in, and I think it's around 30 bucks. Don't shoot me if I'm wrong, but very good, easy knife. This is the only knife you need, probably. You could buy like 2 of these the rest of your life and you'd be totally done with knives. Fairly easy to sharpen, maintain, and the action's great, and the lockup is great. Very sturdy. It's not going to fall apart on you. It's got 4 back spacers back here. Just very good knife. So the rat number one or the rat number two, the rat number one, by the way, is just ginormous. If you're into camping or something like that, you might want to get the rat number one. But otherwise, you know, the rat number two is probably going to be fine for most people. So the Rat 1 and 2 are fairly old school. They've been around forever. They're classics for a reason. And you know, if you're going to start a collection, there's no reason why you shouldn't have a Rat 2. I would suggest getting the D2 version of it, the D2 knife steel. But if you want to get the cheaper AUS-10 one, totally valid. Next, there's a couple of different brands that make budget knives, and these are some of my favorite ones that I think you should get. Number one, Sencut makes a very good budget knife, and this is a button lock, an example of a button lock, which I think is a really great kind of locking mechanism that I think a lot of beginners are going to like. And advanced people. I have plenty of button locks. You just push this button right here, and it just drops shut for you. Again, this one happens to be thumb studs, but it also has something called a flipper tab, which you can light switch, which is just pushing down, or you can button. So if you button, you just push straight in. You don't get as much flicky action, or just light switch, push down. And works really well. And again, it has the nice thumb studs. This happens to be the Sencut Serene, which I think is the best knife that Sencut has made last year, and one of the best budget knives you can get. It happens to be a slightly larger one, overall at 8 inches and 3.5 inches of blade. So if you have smaller hands, you might not like it. This one is reversible, though. What I mean by that is it's good for lefties as well as righties. The Rats, by the way, were good for lefties and righties. In general, most people carry their knives tip up, and then the blade goes next to the outside of your pocket. So if you're right hand, you're going to be carrying this in your right hand pocket, right? If you're left, you're going to switch it over to the clip to the other side and carry it in your other pocket. So Sencut, they have a lot of good budget options. They're a good company to go for. This happens to be D2, which, you know, some people in this day and age think D2 is really outmoded, and I can't help but agree, but at the same time, I think it still has its place. Another great company to go to, and probably the one that's represented the most, is Magurran. And Magurran makes this, which is $28, also D2, but $28, you really can't beat it. It's the Talism, Talism, and again, there'll be a link down below. And then it has this fuller right here. This little notch here is called a fuller, so you can actually finger flick it. I'm putting my thumbnail here and pointing out like a Spidey flick. And this is a liner lock. Very cheap, but for what you're getting, extraordinarily good. And it has a flipper, right? So what I consider to be maybe the best Magurran that's come out so far, and it's fairly recent actually, is the Morol. I think it might be one of the best budget knives ever. I think it's only $49, so a little bit more expensive. This was $49 as well. This is about $49, I believe. And the Morol comes in a button lock as well as a liner lock. It has some pretty good, construction to it. And what's killer for me is it comes in a really nice knife steel. It comes in 14C 28N, and it says it right there. And the reason why I like this knife steel is because it can take a very fine sharpening, and it will keep its fine, sharp blade for a long time. It was actually originally made in Sweden for, I think it was Sweden, for razors for shaving. So it's a stainless steel. And once it's sharp, it will stay sharp for a very long time. This also has a forward choke point where you can kind of choke up onto it. And this blade shape is called a Wharncliffe rather than, drop point or something like that. What's cool about this blade shape is that it's more of a utility knife type shape, and it will stay in the material that you're cutting longer. So if you're doing a lot of work, in construction, or breaking down a lot of boxes, or you're using your knife for a lot of those type of activities, this kind of blade shape is going to be really good for you. So the Morol, I highly suggest it. The Centurion is also another Magurran knife, 14C28N. Again, another liner lock. Notice that both of these have solid clips. Instead of wire clips or clips that are bent metal, these are actually milled out. And the clips are very, very nice. I like these a lot more than clips like this, because this kind of clip can get bent pretty easily. So when it's milled like this, it's much easier to use. I love this Centurion, and it's going to stay in my collection forever. Again, I believe it was only $49. Link down below. Really, really nice construction. Great, great action. Action meaning that like I just start the lock, and now it's resting on my thumb, and it's on the ramp. The ball is on the ramp, and it just drops shut. What I mean by ball is there's a little in the lock insert. There's a little ball in there. I don't know if you can see it. But once this blade gets up onto the lock right here, it's now going to drop shut once it's past this little point and it's on there. And all I have to do is drop it and it'll just shut. So that's action, okay? The way that it opens and flies out is very, very nice. This Centurion is one of the best budget knives I've ever handled, and I absolutely love it. I like the shape too. It's not your plain Jane type thing. It's got like a multi-finish. Looks like a bead blast here, belt finish here. It's just very cool. Again, flipper action is great, and you've got the option of thumb studs. And I think I would be remiss without mentioning the Pyrite. This is a little bit more expensive, the CGRB Pyrite. This is scale material. This handle, scale is another word for handle, is aluminum, but the general cheaper version comes in much cheaper. This has something called a spidey hole or a flick hole or whatever you want to call it. And I'm putting my finger in here, and I'm I'm pointing out my lower two fingers. So I'm using my middle finger here, and I'm just flicking out to get it to open. You can also just roll this out. This is a button lock. Very good construction. Great blade shape for utility purposes. The steel on this one is a proprietary steel from the Chinese company that made them. And it is a very, very good steel. It takes a very nice, fine, polished edge. AR RPM 9. I actually like it a lot. So that's CGRB, and I'll just mention one more CGRB, and that is the Echo EKKO, which is actually from a famous designer named Ray Laconico. Again, a great blade shape, flicky hole, and it falls shut really nicely, and again, fairly cheap. And it also has the option of front flipping, which means I can use my thumb right here, and I can just roll this over if I want. And when I get good at it, I can flick it open like that with my thumb over the top. So another way to deploy a knife. That one takes a while to learn how to do. And I just want to mention, this is $65, so on the more expensive side of what I'm showing you right now. But this is the Mini Keen by Kaviso, and again, designed by Ray Laconico. Great knife steel, 14C28N. Probably one of the best actions here, and it looks super nice, and it looks a lot more expensive than it actually is. It has a full back spacer instead of pillars. Nice liner lock access. It's just an all-around great little knife. And then finally, I wanted to just mention one other thing, and that is that everyone usually needs some kind of fixed blade, and I really like these two. These are both under $20. I believe this one's 16 or 18. This is the Hultafors, a high carbon steel knife, and it doesn't have a full tang. In other words, the metal doesn't go all the way through, but it's super strong, and it is just a great knife to have kicking around for making fires in your truck. It also something called and this is the Morakniv Robust, and it has something called a Scandi grind, again under $20, which means that it has a flat part here and then a really steep part here. That whole bevel is actually your cutting edge, which makes it stay sharp forever. I'd just like to mention a couple other things. The first off is that there's a company called Kizer, and they make great budget knives as well. However, I've kind of moved out of my Kizer phase, so I don't really have any examples except for this, and I just have this because it makes me smile, and it's made by a designer that I really like. This is the Urban Bowie. But Kizer is a good company to check out if you are just getting into knives, and it might be the next company that you go to as well. I'd also like to say that if you get into Spyderco, which is absolutely fine. This is called the Spidey hole, right? There's lots of different lock mechanisms, and right now I feel like they're kind of overpriced, but some of them are American made. None of these knives on the table are American made. They're all made in China, and the reason for that is because if you're going to spend this little money, this is what you're going to get. In general, there's no American made knives that are under $50 or under $65 or even under $100. So if you want to support America, you're going to have to spend the money. That's what I'm going to say about that, or Canada for that matter. These are all knives that are affordable, accessible. Like I said, you should try all the locks. There's one major kind of locking mechanism which is not on here, and that is the frame lock. See an example of a frame lock. Frame lock is kind of like a Lahner lock in that over here it's got this hole cut out here to disengage and lock the blade. However, any kind of frame lock that you're going to get is going to end up costing you a lot of money, or not a lot of money, but you know, it's definitely over $100. So chances are you're not going to start off by getting a frame lock. I know that when I got into the game, I certainly did not have a frame lock for a long time. So those are the kind of, and I guess I didn't show you an example of a bar lock. The moral I think now comes in a bar lock. So if you wanted to skip getting the liner lock version of this, I believe they now make a, oh, wrong knife. Where's the moral? Where are you? I'm blind all of a sudden. The moral does come in a liner lock. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about that. This is a bar lock. I'm in a bar lock. This is a bar lock where you pull back on this and it opens and closes. This knife is actually over 100. This is the Hogue Deca 2. Comes in MagnaCut. I believe the basement price on this is 125 with a plain scales, not this one. And honestly, it is a phenomenal knife, and it's USA made. And, you know, it's one of the best knives I could recommend if you're going to spend more than $100, but you want USA made and you don't have that much money to spend. I would probably point you in the direction of the Hogue Deca. Very cool grind on the knife too, reversed Honto, very sharp, and it's just overall a great knife. So that's what I would suggest if you're going to try a bar lock. Dude, I would stay away from Benchmade. Like, they're just overpriced. You're paying for the stamp on the blade. It's called the butterfly tax. Just stay away from them. That's what I would say. But, you know, if you really get into collecting, there's nothing wrong with picking up a knife just to see what they're about and making your own opinions and then selling it later on. I'll also say that all these knives are basically not resellable. When you get into knives that cost a little bit more, you can at least recoup your money sometimes or lose very little. And sometimes you hit a home run and you can make a little bit of money off a knife. But all of these knives are gonna depreciate in value, but they're gonna be great. You should have them forever. Yeah, so that's my advice there. I think that's all I want to say about that. There's also going to be links down below to tools. I would suggest that you really need to get these Torx head screws and a little driver. There's links down below, and these are very inexpensive, but what they allow you to do is change, like if you were to get Ontario Rat, they allow you to change how much torque is on the pivot, and that will allow the action to be better or worse. And in general, every knife that you get in this price range, you are going to want to play with the pivot strength. You do want it to still be locked up. In other words, no blade play. It won't move side to side when you do this, right? I'm trying to get this to focus. And the way that you do it is you tighten it or loosen it, okay? And for that, you need this basic tool. The other thing I would say is you probably want just a little bit of lube, but don't go crazy with the lube. Don't put just a drop goes a long way. There are two major brands that I would suggest that you get. Number one, you might have Hops No. 9 gun lube already. This is a perfectly okay $10 choice, I think it is, with this needle applicator. You don't even need to open your knife. You can just stick it in there and get it where you need it. And the other one is KPL. Mine are worn off right now. A bottle of this will last forever, much more expensive, but the KPL knife pivot lube is what it stands for, will last you forever as well. Links down below. I think that's everything I have for initially getting into pocket knives. Thank you so much for sticking with me through all of this. If you have questions, ask it down below. You can also search my videos and go back and look. I have disassembly videos for almost all of these and reviews. Check those out too. The knife community is very welcoming and opening, and they will answer your questions if you just ask. So Just ask. Thanks so much, guys. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Really helps out the channel. Also, if you want to be entered to win a knife every month, all you got to do is go to Patreon or support me on YouTube for $3 a month, and you'll be entered to win a knife every month. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you next time on Sharp Ends. Bye-bye now.